You worked at, you were the Deputy Group CIO of BP, which is a huge organization as well, and now at the MOD, huge organization. How do you see that the role of the CIO is different at a commercial organization as it is over here?
I'm not sure it is.
No?
Primarily, I think the challenges and the opportunities and the way you have to go about it are largely the same. I think we can often make too much of the government versus commercial world differences. Fundamentally, what needs to get done is pretty much the same. I'll tell you one of the things that I think, and those that have known me for a number of years might laugh at this, but there are two watchwords I've developed in the last few months of being here about the job we need to get done and the amazing opportunity that we've got. And those two watchwords are patience and persistence.
So how would you describe your fundamental role as a CIO here at MOD?
So I've got this phrase called the Chief Connecting Officer, and I think that's a really important part of it. I mean, I talked at the beginning of this conversation about the need for us not to plough our own furrows, but to come together and work more cohesively. That requires somebody to be, I suppose, cheerleading that, someone who's a focal point and a focal leadership point for helping bring that together. To then access and realise the specific digital and information opportunities, this is a team sport. This isn't anymore about, let's call it an old style IT group talking with an interested set of functional users. This is an integrated team sport. So people from various parts of the organisation with different skills all need to come together and generate a conversation that says, well, how would we do this in a very different way, realising the opportunities that are in front of us. And again, I think the role of the CIO is to be the cheerleader for that. And I think that's really quite important. Maybe my final point on that would be, and this isn't just the role of the CIO, but it's definitely, I think, the role of the senior leaders in the function. The first part is we need to connect our colleagues to the world of what's possible. That's really important. So showing people what might be, and then they will create a spark that goes, I know how I could do that in this world. But that's not enough. It needs also to partner with the world of the doable. So people, when they see something that's possible, need also to be confident that that is doable in my environment. And I don't just mean the technology building of it, that we can put the capability around them to make that, whatever that is, work in this environment here. So the world of possibility and the world of the doable are important parts of what the digital and IT function have to bring to the party.
You've been a top digital leader, CIO in oil and gas, in insurance, in water, utilities, now at MOD, completely different industries. How long does it typically take you if you get into a new job, I mean, to just master the business context? Because and how important is that? How industry savvy do you need to be, and how much do you need to know your industry to be successful as a CIO?
I think there are a common set of challenges that I think, broad experience is applicable everywhere, but I wouldn't want that to get in the way of, you really do have to know your business context. You really do need to understand what this business is. I'm not sure there is a typical time to get that. Some of that is driven by the particular context of what's important right now. I certainly took lots of time when I first came into defence to try to understand what was a very different world for me. I took the job because I thought I could make a difference, but I also knew that in taking the job, it would put me on my learning edge. And I think at the point anyone walks into something and says, well, I can make a difference and it's already tailor-made, you're set up for failure. A lot of people put a lot of effort, and I'm extremely grateful for it, and they're still doing it, to make sure I've had as much access as I can to understand how defence in the UK actually works. So I've been out with all the frontline commands. I've had first-hand exposure.
You've been on the ships and in the air?
Yeah, and people have put a lot of effort into, and I've put a lot of time into doing that. But it's not just being there and experiencing the environment, it's also talking to people. So it's important to talk to the front, people who are actually using all this stuff and understand what their experience is and how things occur for them. And I've put a lot of effort into doing that, and I will continue to keep putting effort into that. There are people here who have have a lifetime, working lifetime of understanding and knowing what that is, and I've only scratched the surface of it. And maybe my last point on that is, and it's about the teamwork, and it's about the team that we need to put together. It's really important that the team, again, it's a team sport, and you can't know everything. You can't cover all of the territory in such a complex. So we need to be putting, the right military leaders into my team. We need to be mixing that with the right civilian expertise. We need to be bringing new external people, which we are, external people in, that creates the right balance. So by creating the right teamwork and the right mix of diversity of experience, then that's an important part of being able to solve that particular issue.
So let's talk about your style of leadership. I mean, you run your central shared service, and then the different groups in the different business units. How do you think people perceive your leadership? Let's start with that. What do you think after a year and a half they say about you when you're not in the room?
I'd like to say that they would use my two watchwords: he's patient and persistent. They would probably certainly get I'm persistent. I think people would say I have a passion. I have a definite view of where we need to go. I genuinely think they would say I'm collegiate. I sit on the senior management team of Defence. I think my colleagues there, as well as my colleagues within the function, would say that I value teamwork and that we work together reasonably well. I think they would say that I hold a very strong point of view, but that I'm prepared to, through an inquiry, I believe in the power of an inquiry conversation, that I will change whatever it was because we've learned something new. So I would hope that those would be some of the key things that people would say.
Okay. You shared your MBTI profile with us. And we use the MBTI, the Myers-Briggs personality type profile, as a common thread in the conversations that we have with the top European CIOs and digital leaders. And your profile, you're an ENTP, which is also known or described as the visionary. And I'm going to read quickly a small description of ENTPs. There are inspired innovators, motivated to find new solutions to intellectually challenging problems. They're curious, clever, and seek to comprehend people, systems, and principles that surround them. They're typically open-minded, unconventional, and visionaries that want to understand, analyze, and influence other people. How does that resonate?
I think that's reasonably accurate, and I think for me, and I think I've got a reasonable degree of self-awareness. One of my things I learned a number of years ago in my BP career was I'm generally quite empathetic. I'm quite a good team player, but I also learned that when push comes to shove, task will often trump empathy. And I need to be aware of that as we move forward. Maybe I was going to say that's a light-hearted point. It's not. It's actually a very serious point. But maybe the other bit that I would add is because of that profile, I am aware that sometimes people can perceive me as being a butterfly. You flip from one thing to the next. I need to make sure that I have the right capability and teamwork in place that is genuinely following through on things. And I'm a great believer in having the right kind of balanced teamwork and capability. That I'm a huge, passionate believer in diversity and inclusion as a smart and sensible way of doing business. Of course, it's values based. Yep. That's important, but it's also just a really smart way of doing business.
Okay. People with your personality profile, they need to watch out with, they can be very argumentative. They can sometimes be insensitive, intolerant, find it difficult to focus or dislike practical matters. You already talked about that you need to focus and that you have found a way to do that. What are the other challenges that you have overcome? And how have you done that?
Well, I mean, a leopard is a leopard, and it's not suddenly going to become a zebra, because we're all built differently. And we are what we are. Yep. I think one of the things I would argue I've learned over the years is the point I made earlier about self-awareness. Mm-hmm. Being aware of who you are and what makes you tick and how you react in particular circumstances gives you, and being thoughtful about it, keeping it in your mind, gives you an opportunity to, you won't stop how you're going to react because that's who you are. Yeah. But you have a better ability to be able to control whether you choose to let whatever the reaction is follow through the way it would follow through, or whether you intervene with it. And sometimes, as ever, you get that right, and sometimes you catch it some way further down the line. But I think that would be that would be my reflection on that. Self-awareness is a really important tool in order to whatever personality type you are.
Yep. Let's talk about your values. What are the guiding principles, the values in your life, and the things that you want your children to take away from you?
So I believe it's really important. I mean, you've taken it right out of the work context, which is great. First and foremost, and I think this is relevant in a work context, I want people to believe in themselves. Mm-hmm. I want them to believe in their own capability and ability, and to feel confident about how they're able to bring that to the world. Mm-hmm. I think it's important that, and it's okay that people say, well, here's my strengths, and here's the things that are things I need to be thinking about and be aware of. So having that at your fingertips, I think gives you a much greater degree of confidence, mm-hmm. and a much greater ability, whatever situation you're in, to be able to feel fulfilled and confident about what you're doing. I also believe that it's important to, as much as possible, do what you said you would do. So that's about integrity and honesty. Mm-hmm. And of course, everyone will fail. Everyone fails in that. And it's actually okay to say that and know that, but it's also important then, as an important part of values, to say, actually, I didn't really get that bit done, did I? Mm-hmm. And go back and have a conversation with whoever it is you might need to, sometimes with yourself, but also sometimes then with other people. And I think that's a really important part. I remember many years ago, this is in a work context, someone giving me a piece of advice in the face of some difficult situations we were facing. And what they said was, doesn't really matter. All that is ever missing is a conversation. And I think I would argue I've learned that, sometimes the hard way, over a number of years. No matter what situation you're facing, have a conversation.
When are you happy in your professional life? What makes you tick?
I love being around clever, energetic, passionate people. Mm-hmm. That's just a fantastic place to be. And then the other thing, I need to feel like we're making progress. Mm-hmm. I don't need the world to be perfect. I don't think the world is ever going to be perfect, whether that's the broader world or the particular business situation that we are facing, and trying to move forward. Moving forward is good enough for me, and being able to point at it. But I think it's really important that we can actually do that, say that, and demonstrate it.
Do you have a personal mantra, or a guiding principle that you live by?
Getting stuff done.
Getting stuff done.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue through most of my career, I mean, I'm not the world's greatest intellectual. I'm not dumb, but I ain't the top of the heap. I've been successful by finding ways to get stuff done and make things happen. And that's about connecting people and connecting ideas. And back to my point, patience and persistence.
In a career like yours, I'm sure you had some very interesting successes and some brilliant failures. Could you share one of your most brilliant failure and what you learned from it?
It's always people-based. And my biggest failures, and probably the one I would pick, I go back into a previous life, was trying to get a particular project done where I was absolutely clear the outcomes were obvious, and put quite a lot of effort and quite a lot of angst into trying to make that so, but hadn't properly taken account of what actually the broader equities of a number of wider stakeholders actually was, and paid the price for that by ploughing a furrow that I knew I was right. And actually, while I might have been right based on a narrow view of what the world was, wasn't the way the world was seen by many other people. So I think my biggest takeaway from that was the way the world occurs for people is not always the same as you think it is, and you need to be thoughtful, you need to be using these to understand what the environment is that you're in, and be prepared to learn from it.
Yeah. And what would you say was like the most surprising or your favorite success that you have ever realized?
I'm going to make it quite personal, and I won't say who, but watching and being part of someone at the midpoint in their career facing some challenges, genuinely blossom and grow and actually become a very, very significant senior leader on the back of that. There are lots of things we all do in our career where, and I've talked about the importance of getting stuff done, but actually mostly that's just stuff. The really valuable things are where you can point at people and see where they are and how they've grown and how they've developed.
Okay. Last question is, I mean, people that are looking at this video, this conversation, many of them will be aspiring digital leaders. What would your advice be to younger people that want to have a similar career and success like yours?
A couple of things. Never ignore your passion, but be thoughtful about how you apply it, and don't give up.
On a final note, Charlie, and thank you very much for this beautiful conversation. Is there anything else that you want to share with people out there that are watching at this video that we haven't touched on yet?
I mean, I would just simply, and it's something I touched on, this is the most exciting time I can ever think of to be involved in the world of digital and IT. It is truly remarkable and breathtaking, the opportunities that are out there for us. And I would just absolutely encourage everyone to just jump right in at the deep end, and don't be afraid to fail. I know we talk lots about it's important to fail, but actually mostly in the environments we're in, usually we don't. We have tried to avoid it. And actually I think it's quite important that we say it is okay to, certainly you should not be using that as an excuse for not trying something. You must try stuff.
Okay. Thank you very much for sharing your insights, your ideas, your visions. It was a real pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.